Hi, friend. So glad you're joining me to get started with this new teaching video logging. What we're going to talk about in this one is the materials to start with. And these are going to make or break your painting. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to watercolor, if you're experienced in watercolor. If you don't use the right materials, then you're going to find a lot of frustration in your painting. Get a pen and paper. You're going to want pen and paper. You want to write all this down. Take as much notes as you need, pause, rewind. If you know some of this stuff already, fantastic. That's awesome. You're ahead of the game. But if you're brand new to this is probably going to be the most important information from here on out. Choose the quality over the quantity. That is a big game changer. A lot of times when we go to the store or we look online, we buy the stuff that is far more affordable. You get more pages, and what we're going to call those is student grade. Okay. And then there's the higher end, like the Arches and the Winsor Newton. Those are more professional grade. So we're going to say student grade and professional grade is the two different ones that we're going to talk about. What I want you to know straight up is that it's not you, it's the watercolor. So student grade paper is usually made from a wood pulp. Okay, wood pulp has short little fibers in there. Well, in watercolor, you want paper that's not going to disintegrate on you. The shorter the fibers, the easier it is that it's going to disintegrate, or what I like to say, it's going to give out on you. And they really don't take the water or the pigments as well. Is not archival. It's not 100% rag cotton or linen, and it doesn't last over time. Professional grade watercolor, the difference is that those are made 100% cotton. Cotton are long fibers. Okay, so when they lock, it takes a lot more work for them to break apart. Okay, so they can hold a lot more water. And also they're made with more of a gelatin sizing. So there's minimal use of man-made materials intertwined with those. The other thing is that they're mold made. They're not machine made. Your student grade watercolor papers are machine made. Okay. Professional grade watercolors are made with molds or by hand. You had your decal and you poured the pulp and squished it down with a sponge, put it on newspaper. At least I did. What I suggest to my students is if you have to go to the student grade, if that is all that you can afford, I would grab the Canson Montval. I think I said that right. Montval. It's black and it's got an old man face on it and things like that. I don't have it. I used to tell my students to purchase that, so I used to use it. But we've moved to a different brand. The other one that you can do that's very economic is Fluid 100, and they're a really good quality paper. I could definitely, when I paint on it, I could definitely tell that the fibers are really long, and my students tend to have pretty good outcomes with those. So those would be the only two that I would highly recommend if you went to the student grade level. The professional grade, you don't have to go out and spend $100 on paper. Okay. What's nice is that Thick Blick has come out with what they call what do they call it? Blick Premieres. Okay. And this is now what I have my students grab. It's very affordable in comparison to a lot of other professional watercolor papers, but unfortunately, you can only get them through Thick Blick online unless you have a Blick supply store near you. I live in Des Moines, Iowa. There's a Blick in Omaha, 2 hours west, and there's a Blick in Iowa City, 2 hours east. So I order online unless I know my dad travels, so sometimes I give him a list. But so Winsor Newton makes a really nice watercolor paper. And then of course there's Arches. And Arches, I mean, no one wants to buy Arches because of how much it is, but this is the Arches I use. Whatever paper you end up getting, if it's professional grade, I want you to use it all the time. My students will bring in Arches and they'll hold it off to the side, but they'll do all their projects in class on the student grade paper and they get frustrated. And I'm like, I see you have arches in your bag. Pull that out. Let's put, oh, and they use it and they're like, oh, that was so much better. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's kind of worth it. And you could always paint on the other side too. So don't feel like you're really wasting. Totally worth your time and worth your materials. Nothing that you paint, no matter how much you don't like it, is never a waste because with watercolor, practice, practice, practice. I would recommend buying a block or a sheet. Okay. What I use is a block. So we'll use this for an example. Blocks are glued on all four sides. Okay. With a little opening. You can see the paper start to come up just a little bit after painting. And you take a palette knife or like a spoon or butter knives work really, 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 really well for it. And you put it in there and then you break around the glue and then your piece of paper comes off. So it has a protectant. The paint does not go through to the other pages. So you don't have to worry about that. And you don't have to tape it down. You don't have to size it. The sheets, you buy the big sheets because you'll see, let's say I live 1 mile away from Hobby Lobby, so I go to Hobby Lobby, but you'll see where they have these flat shelves and all these papers, right? And they have watercolor paper in there and they carry arches. And you can do that because you're buying one sheet at a time and you're going to pay between $5 to $10 a sheet. If I buy a sheet and I'm not going to paint that big, you'll have to cut it down. You'll have to do what I call baptizing, which is dunking it entirely in water, laying it on a waterproof surface, like a board, masonite board or something. Tape it down while it's still wet, let it dry overnight, and then you can start painting. I don't want to take that time. And that might be me being lazy. So this just works so much better. You can buy a little one. It doesn't have to be a big one. And then the coolest part is when you're all done and you've used the last sheet, okay, you have this really nice board. So all the paper is glued to this big, thick, heavy-duty board, okay? And it's got a flap. I could take one off, baptize it, tape it onto this board, and then I have 2 paintings going on at the same time. Try to stay away from the pads. Because also, if you got a pad, that little bit of glue at the top, because remember, pad's only glued at the top, you're going to have to baptize that, put it on a surface, tape it down, and wait. So what kind? You're seeing all kinds of colors. You see the gray, you see the red, you see the green, you see the pink. There's so many colors. So there's hot press watercolor paper and there's cold press watercolor paper. Hot press is typically what I use. It's very smooth, like Bristol, or like your copy paper, but thicker, obviously. It's also, though, a really thirsty paper. What I mean by that is that the fibers are so tightly woven and compressed with heat, hot pressed, that it requires a lot of water to get things to move. Cold press, the fibers are a little looser and it has a texture, okay, a watercolor paper texture. But what's nice about the cold press, especially if you're beginning or if you're intermediate level, is that it holds the water. It's not as thirsty, so you have more time. The water doesn't evaporate. It doesn't go into the paper as quickly. So you have more time to move that water around. You have more time to move your pigments around. My recommendation to start, because I'll be working on cold press in these videos for now, is to get a block of cold press watercolor paper. You have 3 different weights, 90 pound, you have 140 pound, and then you have 300 pound, which 300 pound, it's the most expensive. And then 2, 300 pound, you don't ever have to tape it down. I mean, it's so heavy that you can put a gallon of water on it and it'll still stay pretty good. It's typically when you want to do a big painting and you want the deckled edges and make it all pretty and nice. I pretty much stick to the 140-pound hot press. That was a lot, and that was just paper.